provinces set the rules on alcohol. And so essentially, the Constitution Act was used to monopolize the alcohol industry. And I think that may be happening again with cannabis on the provincial level.
I suggest that the evidence of history is on our side. That our species will evolve together, and there's no way that they should be restricting this from humans. It should be Homo sapiens' right to have this plant as much as it's right to have water or air.
So was there a question? No. Chris Lawson's, I've known him for 20 some odd years. He's the pot poet. He's got some great poetry, a little book he probably has with him too, with some great poetry about the history of marijuana. Did you have a question? In 2016 we had 17,500 Canadians charged for cannabis offenses. That's down from an average of about 35 to 45,000 from previous decades. And probably hasn't been that low since mid-1972.
My boy's clinic up at St. Clair and Kennedy.
Arrested at dispensaries and growing has gone down, possession has gone down, selling has gone way up, and in fact,
Scarborough Puffs.
Because the government wants to eliminate. Over 1,000 dogs have been shot by Canadian police in the last 50 years. You know, we've had our children taken away from us, our homes, our cars. You know, we've certainly been intimidated by the newspaper coverage of our arrest, getting fired. We're owed a big apology. We're owed money for all those days in jail for nothing more than some transient bigotry of the government. And that is the underlying reason why marijuana is illegal.
We got a monopoly coming in Ontario. The provincial government's going to monopolize cannabis sales. And they say they have the expertise to do this. And you might be thinking, well, that's kind of a weird thing to say. The provincial government have the expertise to sell cannabis more so than the cannabis community. Seems kind of odd. And they say, well, listen, we're experts because we're really good at asking people for their ID. Because they do that in liquor stores. So they think, you know, this is pretty much just like liquor. And you know, we're really good at asking for it to see ID. So we're just the perfect people to sell cannabis. And we do not want the cannabis community being involved with cannabis anymore. They're very serious about that. No more selling cannabis is their message. The Attorney General has put us on notice. So everyone please make note of that. So, we're all to shut down. They're going to have a summit. This is what the provincial government's going to hold, an enforcement summit on how to shut down dispensaries, because this is such a big problem. They're going to bring in the firefighters and the police and astronauts and brain surgeons. They're all going to gather and say, how can we possibly shut down dispensaries? We got to do it. You know, we got gang violence, we got gun violence, we got domestic violence. We got poverty problems in Ontario. We got housing problems. We have infrastructure problems. We are in the middle of an opioid epidemic, and they're going to hold a summit on how to shut down dispensaries? Shame on the provincial government. Shame! You know, it's crazy, because back when pot was evil, they didn't care about it. But now that they could make some money, now they care a lot. Now dispensaries, they really have to shut down. So, a lot of people have said this is a bad plan. It is a bad plan for so many reasons. I'm just going to set out 7 reasons why this is a stupid plan. So the first reason this is a stupid plan is that it's actually going to make Ontario less safe. It's going to have the effect of driving dispensaries and the cannabis community further underground. So instead of having a well-lit shop on a main street with a store that tests their cannabis, ID every time, have everything marked for THC and CBD levels, take pride in their product, treat their employees with respect, instead of that, it's going to be pushed into the back rooms and back alleys, in which it's going to be harder to regulate. And it's going to attract organized crime, of course. And you know what happens when you don't regulate and you push things back to the corners? What happens, and I'll give you an example. If you go to fill up on gas, well, if I have a dispute filling up with gas, then we can call the police and I say, listen, I paid $100 for my gas, or he says, listen, he filled up but he didn't pay, and the police can settle it. Or if it's a lot of money, let's say I'm buying a house and there's a dispute, well, we can go to court. I don't have to get a gang of my friends with baseball bats and meet a gang of their friends with baseball bats and settle it that way. You know, the courts aren't great, and dealing with the police, it's all a headache, but it's a lot better than the alternative. But the cannabis community is denied that protection, and that's the provincial government plan, is to make Ontario less safe, to push it into the corners, to bring in organized crime, who love that sort of violence. So, reason number one, it's a bad idea, is it makes Ontario less safe. It's a bad idea, is it's doomed to failure. They think the cannabis community is going to shut down because they asked us to. The cannabis community, 100 years of prohibition, and they haven't shut down. 100 years it's been a crime, and they kept trucking. And they think now that it's legal, the cannabis community is going to shut down? The cannabis community endured the Harper era mandatory minimums. Remember 6 months for jail for 6 months, or jail for 6 plants under Harper? We put up with all that, and you know what? They know this is rubbish. Vice magazine recently put out a piece in which there was this secret liberal memo about how, well, you know, the cannabis community, they're not going to shut down, and they're going to keep operating, and yet they come out and tell us, you know, we're going to shut them all down, don't worry about this. They know it's a lie, they know